Welcome everyone to the session. I'm Rachel Blackburn. I'm on the corporate operations team at Oracle. I'll be moderating the webinar today. This webinar is part of a weekly Oracle at Oracle webinar series where you have the opportunity to hear from the executive team that reimagined Oracle. In this series of webinars, we share insights from our own journey to the cloud and demonstrate how we're using Oracle Cloud to power our own business and enable exceptional customer and employee experiences, and share our learnings so others can do the same. Let's dive into today's topic. Today, you'll hear how Oracle reimagined marketing to deliver an always-on customer experience. I'm going to pass it over to your hosts for today, Kelvin and Benze, so they can introduce you to their role at Oracle.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelvin G. I'm the Senior Director of Modern Marketing Business Transformation at Oracle. I know it's a fancy title, but all it means is that I get to train and enable Oracle marketers around the world to adopt modern marketing strategies and best practices in areas like ABM, content marketing, digital marketing, and storytelling. Benze?
Thanks, Kelvin. This is Benze Gazdang. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing Technology. My job is basically to help marketers with the latest and greatest technologies to be amazing marketers. And because Oracle has some pretty cool MarTech technologies, sometimes I feel like a kid in a candy shop.
That's great, but you feel that way, Benze. So first, I want to acknowledge the times that we are living in. Needless to say, these are unprecedented times. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, but if there's one thing we know, it's that COVID-19 is the force that is triggering and accelerating digital transformation everywhere. All of us are experiencing this webcast from the comfort of our homes, mostly because our employers have mandated us to do so. You also know that universities and schools have shifted to distance learning. Restaurants have transitioned to online ordering and pickup and delivery. Car manufacturers like Tesla are now delivering vehicles with no contact experience. And then clinics and hospitals are now offering virtual appointments through video chats or calls through telemedicine. So the world is experiencing really rapid transformation, more so than any era we've ever seen. You know, there's a famous saying that goes, real change takes place in deep crisis. And I know that sounds like a scary saying, but it is true. But if it's helpful, this quote from Ken Poirot also rings true. Today is your opportunity to build the tomorrow you want. And at Oracle, this quote really resonates with us because a few years ago, we were faced with some pretty significant challenges. And we had to paint a vision for our future tomorrow. Before I talk about some of those challenges, though, first let's level set and talk about who Oracle is. We are a very large and complex enterprise. We generate about $40 billion in revenue every year. We've got lots of partners. We have over 136,000 employees around the world. We're a very acquisitive company. We've made over 140 acquisitions in the last 13 years. We are a truly global concern and enterprise. We have 430,000 customers across 175 countries, and we sell and market over 4,000 products. Those 136,000 employees I talked about, well, 1,500 of them are marketers, and we feed and support 40,000 salespeople around the world. So you might be asking yourselves, well, Oracle is so large and successful, $40 billion in revenue, what can possibly go wrong? Well, plenty, as it turns out. First, we realized a few years ago we had legacy data, systems, and processes. What you're looking at is a screenshot of our marketing architecture from a few years back. And what you'll probably notice is that, one, we had a lot of legacy systems. They weren't modern and they weren't automated. And then number two, they were largely disconnected from each other. We also had messy data. We had lots and lots of data in data silos across the organization. So inside of our organization, we had data silos across sales, service, marketing, finance, our customer marketing team, our websites. They all were in their own repositories. Then we had data silos outside of our organization with our partners, our third-party vendors, and we had social data that we had to integrate as well. So those were our data silos, but we also had organizational silos. Sales was largely disconnected from marketing. Product marketing were running sales plays, which were disconnected from field marketing and the campaigns that they wanted to run, which were disconnected from what corporate marketing wanted to do. On top of that, our demand waterfall was broken. Only 2% of our MQLs, our marketing qualified leads, were turning into sales accepted opportunities. And while that aligns with industry benchmarks, we knew we could do better. Oracle was also pivoting to the cloud. We were transforming ourselves from a legacy on-premises technology company to a cloud services company. And while that transformation has its own set of challenges, the biggest one was the fact that many of our largest customers didn't even realize we were a cloud company. They still thought of us as a legacy database vendor, not a cloud strategic partner. So that was a problem. So we knew it was time for change. It was time for a new approach. If we wanted to be a cloud company, we essentially had to start acting like one. And so for us, that meant changing everything. So from an offering standpoint, we had to move from becoming a products company where we delivered software on CD-ROMs in the old-fashioned way to delivering cloud computing as a service. We also had to change the pace of change. So before, we would update our products every few years. And now we have to update and roll out new features every quarter. Our design philosophy changed. Before, it was very transactional. And now it's about delivering memorable experiences, both from a product standpoint and a UI standpoint, but also a customer purchase standpoint, the buyer's journey. The audiences had to change. Before, we were marketing and selling primarily to IT, and now we're talking to personas that we never talked to before: sales, service, marketing, finance, HR. So these are whole new conversations which we never had before. And then the customer relationships had to change. Before, the pace was very intermittent. I used to joke that Oracle was like the USS Oracle, the stealthiest submarine on the planet Earth, where we were submerged from the customer's view for the longest period of time, only to reappear when we needed to talk to them. And now it needs to be an ongoing relationship. In fact, we think of the customer lifecycle journey as an infinity loop, where the buy side is on one side, the left side, and then the post-purchase side is on the right side. In fact, we've identified 5 stages of the buyer's journey. The education stage is where we help educate our customers on how to change the status quo. The definition stage is how do we help them define a need for cloud services in our offerings. Stage 3 is the research stage. How do we help arm them with information about our own products and services? The evaluation stage is helping them compare ourselves with the competition so that we are on the short list. And then stage 5 is the selection stage. How do we justify the purchase to their CFO and arming him or her with ROI calculators and information like that. But it doesn't stop there after the purchase stage. We also need to help our customers on the post-purchase journey. We need to help them deploy our solutions. We have to help their users adopt our solutions, because if they're not using it, then they're not deriving value from it. Stage 8 is the actualize stage, helping them calculate the benefits that we sold them on. And then finally, the magical stage, which is stage 9, the recommend or advocate stage. If we do our job right on the own side, then this becomes kind of like a layup, right? It's an easy decision for them to start to recommend Oracle to friends and family. And it also makes the upsell, cross-sell, and renewal process a lot easier as they enter the whole buy side all over again. So that process becomes a layup as well. We also realized, though, that if we wanted our customers to buy our champagne, we had to drink our own champagne. And that's what we did. We leveraged Oracle Cloud to transform our own business and unlock new value. And we primarily did that by focusing on the Oracle Customer Experience Cloud. We then utilized a systematic approach for transforming and continuously improving our operations. And this is a 4-step approach. It starts with streamlining our processes, removing and simplifying the steps for our own Oracle marketers to get things done. We also wanted to empower them with tools that allow them to self-service themselves and to do things autonomously. And if we can do that, streamline and empower, then we will enable them to create experiences that delight our customers. And I'll show you an example of that in a campaign that we ran. And then finally, the automate process. How do we automate all of this using Oracle Cloud? So we're going to walk you through the first step, which is streamline. And Bensei is going to walk you through it. Bensei?
Thank you, Calvin. So when we talk about streamlining, we're really going to focus on technology as well as data. So this is our streamlined MarTech stack that you see on the screen. It is very clean and logically organized. You can see that we mapped it into 5 distinct categories representing different pillars. And it's also clearly mapped to the technology pieces that we're using, which is not surprisingly mostly Oracle. So we have an analytics and BI stack that we use for business intelligence and analytics, machine learning, AI models, and the sorts. We have marketing automation and campaign management. Here, primarily, we use Eloqua, obviously, with Maximizer and Infinity, but this includes our campaign management, our executions, social, mobile events, advertising, and the sorts. So really what runs your campaigns. Then we also have the front-end piece, which is primarily oracle.com and our website. That's where we look at managing communities, content management system, site traffic, search, interactions, tag management, and so forth. Again, we're using OC, Oracle Content and Experience for that. So that's kind of your front end and analytics, what you see on the top row. And then below that is really our backend, our supporting backend technologies. So we have internal support tools that are built for our marketers to make them more productive and better at their jobs. So again, using Apex or database or Java technologies. And then the true backend is really our database, data management tools that we've built on our own hardware, as well as our identity management that we use for permission management, personalization, and so on. So again, this is our MarTech stack. It's pretty powerful, very clean, very easy to explain, and it nicely fits all together. So let's take a look at the data. So Calvin referred to earlier that we have to break down the silos, the data silos that we had in the company. So we've created this database, the customer experience database, and it's really a marketer's dream data warehouse, if you were to define it. So what makes this database or data warehouse tick? It's really 3 phases or 3 different parts as we address it. So the phase 1 is kind of the traditional one, where we have CRM and ERP installed base data, your marketing responses, and purchase data. That's nothing revolutionary there. But about 6 years ago, we moved into what we call the modern phase, where we had social data, so social behavioral data, social profile data enrichment. We were able to do things real time in session. So as our customers are browsing our websites, we can interact with them directly. And then browsing history, which these days we refer to as digital body language. So that your traditional segmentation is what's your title and industry, I'll give you a piece of content that matches that requirement. You can forget all of that, right? If I can watch what you're doing on our website for a few minutes, I can tailor a personalized piece of content way more appropriate and better for you. And then what we've been working on the last 2 years or so is what we refer to as phase 3 or next generation. So it's really around harnessing the power of all of the data put together from all these different places by doing things like predictive modeling, using machine learning, different models to support it, from propensity to buy, lead scoring, lookalike modeling, behavioral modeling, as well as bringing in external models or external vendors to see if they can improve our business and our bottom line. ABM, right? Account-based marketing. Now that we have all this data in one place, how can we roll it up to an account level and do account level segmentation, account scoring, account behavior, and journey mapping? And then also data cloud and BlueKai integration, which really refers to tapping into this enormous anonymous data set out there that you can use for anonymous segmentation, advertising media optimization, lookalike modeling, and personalization. So this really how we address the data challenge and breaking down the silos. So next, once we had this in place, we started to develop really powerful techniques and frameworks. For example, the Predictive Intelligence framework that you can see here, which again is taking the power of all of this data. So we categorized it into 3 kind of categories: fit, intent, and engagement. So fit basically describes what is your ideal customer based on past purchase behavioral data, right? What are companies that are likely to buy a specific solution based on their profile? Then you have intent, which is external market signal data. Bombora is the relevant vendor that we use for this specific one. And we can get weekly search data or weekly trending data on market signals and what other companies are interested in terms of technology solutions. And then you have engagement, which is how are they interacting with Oracle? How is the account interacting with Oracle? Are they aware that we have solutions in specific areas, or they're not even aware of it? So once you combine all of these 3 different circles into and where they intersect, it's basically gold. You hand that over to sales and marketing, and it's ready to close, and the customers are ready to buy. So again, very, very powerful framework by combining different data and data modeling strategies together. So when we look at the results of this, we've seen some really impressive results. So Predictive Intelligence clearly delivers significantly higher win rate across solutions. So you see that when we use this Predictive Intelligence, we see 2 to 4 times higher win rates, so higher won deals across different solutions compared to our baseline. So very, very powerful. Another technique I referred to earlier is really using our anonymous data, or BlueKai for the data management platform. So we can load our first-party data from the customer experience database you've seen earlier and match it with our second and third-party data, our anonymous data in the data cloud. And they use that to activate it through different channels, whether it's search, display, websites, advertising optimization, what have you. So very powerful. And moving on, we've created the data and the technology foundation, but we also need to empower our marketers. So we had to build tools, or we had to implement tools for our marketers that they can really start harnessing the power of all of these data sets. So we've created self-service tools that really accelerates campaign creation and audience planning, from self-service segmentation and audience management dashboards, where they can define and create their own account-based segments or predictive segments or contact-based segments, just as an example. Because of this, we've seen the before and after for time to market metric go down from somewhere around 4 weeks to 5 days or less. So to do an entire campaign launch, and I'm not just talking about an email and the landing page, but this could be a lot more complex multi-channel campaigns. we can from start to finish get out to market in 5 days or less, which is really impressive compared to what it was before. Another example that we're very proud of is using nurture campaigns that are standardized and simplified with dynamic automated programs. So again, we're using Eloqua here, where we can create these unique journeys that are mapped to our customers' buyer's journey and their behavior. And based on their behavior and preset triggers and decision points, we can in real time react to their needs and provide them a really relevant experience. And then lastly, we also need to provide our marketers with analytics and visualizing the results and the performance of their campaigns. So we use Oracle data visualization that is easy to use for business users, very visual, kind of infographic-like, where they can look at all of this data at the fingertips and slice and dice it by many different ways. So again, very powerful, single place where you go and get your analytics, not 15 different analytics data warehouses. So with that, let's move on to the delight part, Calvin.
Great, thank you, Bensei. So now I'm going to walk you through an actual campaign that we ran, leveraging all the technologies and the data that Bensei just walked you through. This is an HCM campaign, Human Capital Management campaign, and we called it Power to the People. It's an ABM campaign, account-based one. So we were essentially targeting 109 accounts that were greenfield accounts, which meant that they could own other Oracle products, but they don't own Oracle HCM. And we were targeting about 3 to 4 contacts per account. You can see here from the creative that it was highly personalized. We were personalizing the creative in the subheads, in the actual content of the emails. We did personalization in the salutation, and then the content was dynamically swapped out based on personalization of the data. Here's an example of the email and the anatomy of the email. So again, the subject line was personalized, the headline, subhead, the greeting, the body copy, and then the assets. But I want to call particular attention to the body copy. So remember when Bensei talked about the predictive intelligence framework and how there was fit, intent, and engagement? Well, intent is data that we gather from vendors like Bombora. And intent's great because it tells us which accounts are in market, which accounts are searching for particular possible solutions around particular topics. So we would leverage that intent data here and actually personalize and embed and insert that intent topic into the actual email in that very first paragraph to show that we were listening and that we wanted this to be relevant to what they were researching. So we would actually insert HCM topics like e-learning, employee retention, human capital management, online recruiting, and even competitive terms. This is a screenshot of one of our digital assets, an ebook. And again, you can see it's highly personalized. We actually swapped out the photography based on the industry that the account is in. This is a screenshot of the interior of that ebook. Again, highly personalized. Actually, one of my favorite pieces of personalization is we would take a screenshot of the customer's website and then drop that into the image on the computer here. And then this is the back of the ebook. Again, highly personalized with the sales rep's contact information, all the way down to her signature. So this HCM campaign, Power to the People, was super successful. In addition to gathering a few awards, it generated over $6 million in pipeline, and our goal was only $5 million. But altogether, the predictive intelligence framework that Bensei talked about, that PI framework has generated, as of today, well, this is a snapshot today, of a pipeline of 372 million. It actually was higher, but some of that pipeline converted into closed revenue. So 372 is the snapshot today. But as of today, we've closed almost $560 million in revenue that's directly attributed to predictive intelligence. So we also realized, though, that we need to track the actual buyer's journey. So we talked about the buyer's journey on the infinity loop slide. This is actually a visual representation of a customer as they go through that buyer's journey. In fact, this is a real live example of a large automotive European manufacturer who was doing research and evaluating Oracle across 3 different solutions, one on the technology side and then our HCM and CX solutions. And you can see how individuals in these accounts, in this particular account, was engaging with Oracle and Oracle marketing content specifically. And this is important because when we talk about the MQL, MQLs are great, but they're only a piece of the larger puzzle in terms of what marketing's value add to the business is. And so we wanted to be able to track engagement for a particular account or accounts. So this is actually a visual representation to show how when marketing gets involved, good things happen. In fact, most revenue that is touched and influenced by marketing actually leads to larger deal sizes. And so roughly 88% of all one revenue is touched by marketing. And when it is touched by marketing, you typically see a 69% lift or increase in the average deal size, as opposed to other deals that aren't touched by marketing, which are smaller. So our entire business has benefited from Oracle Cloud. Ben already talked about the reduction in campaign execution lead time from weeks to days, which was hugely significant for us. But also automating the customer buying experience has been really important for us. We couldn't do what we could do now before because we had data silos. By unifying all the data silos into CXD, we can actually now gather insights and triggers around our customers, like using predictive intelligence and intent data. So I always use the example of Marie Kondo, right? So Marie Kondo, if you watch her show on Netflix, Tidying Up, or you read her books, her methodology is to gather all your clothes from your various closets and throw all your clothes on the bed. Right? And it's an important step in her process because by seeing all this mountain of clothes on your bed, you realize, oh my gosh, I have a clothing problem. It's the same thing with your data. By unifying all of your data into a single repository, you will gain insights that you didn't have before. So that's step number 1. But also by automating our touch points using Eloqua and leveraging the unified data that I just talked about, we can automate a lot of our touches. Whereas before, when we just did batch and blast, well, there's no way we could have done all the different permutations of those digital touches that like I showed you in that Power to the People campaign. Well, we've talked about the lead conversion rate. Well, it also turns out that we doubled our lead conversion. So now that we've talked about how we streamline and empower our processes for marketers, and we showed you an example of how we can create exceptional campaigns that delight our customers, let's next talk about how we can automate all these things in the future. Bense?
Thank you, Calvin. And again, let's take a look into the future and where are we going after this? What are some of the next steps and how do we think about that? So the way we think about it is really the future of digital marketing is combining AI or machine learning with the always-on concept. So leveraging all of the data that we put together, all of the amazing technology around it, and the power of machine learning to harness the data to create these always-on automatic experiences that is interacting with our customers throughout the entire buyer's journey, right? So again, you can have your predictive data, your content preferences, your tactic preferences in the database, and then you can create always on campaigns that are automated. They're personalized based on this data. On the on side, you can use it to predict at-risk customers, to create automated proposal and references and generate them automatically, as well as welcome and onboarding campaigns as soon as customers are starting to use some of our services and solutions. So again, automation, taking it forward, making it a lot smarter, put the brains and leverage the machine to drive that forward is how we see the next few years playing out. And we've got some good news, because everything that you've seen when I talked about the data and the data silos and breaking it down and using this marketer's dream data warehouse that we've built is now actually a product that we're starting to use at Oracle. So it's called CX Unity, and it's really customer intelligence for real-time customer experience. So this creates your unified profile. It supports all of your data enrichment, your segmentation, your analytics, and most importantly, creates all of your personalized experiences. So CX Unity, if we take a deeper look into it, is really where you can manage your data life cycle in a single spot. So you start with definition. You can define your own schema, use a predefined schemas. It's highly extendable, very easy to manage. So someone can go in and say, for my business, this is the marketing data warehouse that I imagine with an easy to use UI. The second step you do is you ingest your data through SFTP or your streaming APIs or any sort of other APIs or data enrichment processes that you may have. And step number 3 is very important. So now that you've got all this data, you need to tie it together. So duplicate resolution, creating a single ID or single key that can go across different systems to help you do that for your customers, for your accounts, for your contacts. You can create your own rules to do the matching and then identify the golden record winner, kind of the golden record promotion. Once you've done all of that work within the system, you can go into activation. So let's start using it, which is really segmentation, creating intelligent attributes that are supported by machine learning or learning. This can be used by any of the CX applications or within 360 APIs. So this is very exciting future. Again, it's brand new, it's just coming out. And this is really going to be, in my view, the future of marketing for the next few years. And again, as a reminder, connect your data, you can create insights, and that is the key to deliver experiences for the empowered customers. So with that, hope you enjoyed this and you got something out of it, and let's move on to questions.
Rachel, do you want to handle some of the questions?
Yes. Thank you, Bense. Thank you, Kelvin. We're going to transition to the Q&A portion of this session. Thank you to all the attendees who have submitted questions already. If you have a question for our speakers, please submit them in the Q&A function that you should see at the bottom of your screen. So we'll start. We have a question from the audience, and Kelvin, I'll direct this one to you, although you both will definitely have some insight into this. What was the most challenging part of the migration to Oracle Cloud?
Bense, why don't you tackle this one, since this is more on the technology side. I'll talk about the transition on the people side, but why don't you tackle the technology piece first?
Sure. I mean, I usually make the joke that technology is the easy part. It's really around your business processes and business change management that is usually the biggest hurdle. But one of the biggest challenges that we faced when you look at problems like this is, where do you even start, right? So where you start is really the first step needs to be to break down the silos and bring the data together, unify the data, because without that, you can have all the automation. It's not going to deliver the results. And then once you've brought all of the data and you centralize the data, now you can have your automation tools. You need to start prioritizing your top use cases and address them one by one or a few at a time. And this is the biggest challenge from a business perspective is really change management. And how do you convince with all of this new technology, or your marketers who've been doing what they've been doing for a long time, that there's new and better and more improved way of doing things, leveraging this new technology.
Yeah, that's right. When we think about any transformation, it's always about people, process, and technology. And so, yeah, like he said, he jokes that technology is actually the easiest part. The hardest part is the change management, getting people on board, which is really kind of my job. So a lot of it is evangelism, right? So a lot of it is education for the people who are in the trenches doing the work, but also educating the management teams that this is the vision that we are headed towards. So it's important to have a vision and a strategy, and making sure you adopt the right strategy. So making sure you do a lot of evangelizing, that never ends. And then educating the marketers on basically what we have. You know, I kind of compare it with having a Tesla in your garage, right? So if it just sits in your garage, it's not going to do you anything. You have to take it out and test drive it. And so the marketers who get it, we will run small pilots and enable them to be successful in those pilots. So we will surround them, kind of like a VC firm will surround them with all the tools to be successful. So we'll let them use the technology. We'll arm them with even additional funding. We'll arm them with agency resources to be successful. And then once they are successful, then we start to see other people jump on board. So it's really important to identify the early adopters, the people who get it, who want to try it out, and then surround them, make them successful, and then start to see traction from there. And that's kind of how you start a revolution. So it's people, process, and technology is how I look at it. But you have to make sure we have the right strategy, and then get the right people on board, and then enable them with the right technologies.
Great, thank you guys. This question is for Bensei. Emily is wondering, where does the digital body language live, like for website visitors, and how can internal marketing teams gain access to those contexts for retargeting campaigns?
Yeah, so the digital body language data lives in the data warehouse as well as in Eloqua. So depending on what specific retargeting campaigns you want to drive, you can set it up in Eloqua automatically based if there are very specific pages you are looking after that you wanna have a reply. For larger, more broader retargeting, we use BlueKai. We're tagging in all of the pages, and based on which pages, combination of pages, title, persona visiting that, the BlueKai retargeting would kick in. So again, it depends on the use case, but it's Eloqua, BlueKai, and then the customer marketing data warehouse.
Great. Another question. Both of you can add insight into this. Calvin, I'll go to you first. How do you differentiate from other cloud products like Salesforce or Sugar CRM?
Well, that's actually more of a technology question. I think I'll probably bounce that one off of Bensei first. You want to tackle that one?
I mean, it's Salesforce and Sugar CRM, they are CRM systems focusing on sales forecasting and sales pipeline management. They're not focusing on the marketer at all. Yes, they do have marketing tools, but there's nothing that compares to what I've described. And I have half of my team, in the last 10 years working at Salesforce. So it's scale, integration, robustness, and very specific marketing user-oriented empowerment versus just supporting sales.
Great. And Bensei, I believe you can also take this one. Jeffrey wants to know if it's a leap to assume that CX Unity would work well with NetSuite or Suite Commerce Advanced.
It's not a leap. So there are two things going on. One, CX Unity has a very powerful data integration kind of framework. So you can integrate any data source of any application using those tools. And Again, those tools are designed for savvy, somewhat technical marketers. You don't have to be a developer or engineer to actually do a lot of those integrations. The second one is Oracle is moving to create all of the CX integrations with Unity out of the box. So you're going to see all of those integrations come out of the box. But right now, today, you can also set it up through the integration module.
Great. And this is a people question. So Kelvin, how are you working to build trust with the sales teams in terms of getting them to follow up on or leverage those MQLs that are coming in from marketing?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question, right? That's been something that we as a civilization has been trying to resolve since the earth started to cool, right? Like the whole sales marketing alignment thing. To me, it starts with making sure you have the right strategy. And when you talk about modern marketing, ABM is really synonymous with that. And that's why ABM is kind of the hottest thing right now in the B2B marketing space. And it has been for the last few years and probably will continue. And the reason why it's getting so much traction is because it forces that alignment between marketing and sales. Before, with traditional demand gen, when you're like fishing with nets, you're just catching a lot of fish and you're throwing that fish over to the other side, sales, and hoping that, they'll clean them and cook them and do something with them. But there's a lot of waste and inefficiency with that strategy, right? So you're catching a lot of fish that may not be a great fit for sales. It's not the fish that they're looking for. So by taking the ABM approach, you're aligning at the top of the funnel with sales around the set of accounts that they care about. And then when you can layer on PI, Predictive Intelligence, that will help the company identify the accounts that are more likely to convert, that's even more powerful. So now you're aligning at the top of the funnel with sales on the right accounts that they care about, but also the ones that are more likely to be successful in converting. So that when you create engagement and when you create MQLs and you throw those over the fence to sales, you don't have that disconnect anymore. You don't have that hand fighting at the bottom of the funnel that you do with traditional demand gen, right? So, the traditional conversation is, hey, I did all this work creating all these MQLs and I gave them to you. How come you're not doing anything with them? And the typical response from sales is, well, these aren't MQLs I care about. Whereas now with ABM, because you've already aligned at the top of the funnel and before you run your campaigns and you throw those MQLs, they don't have that excuse anymore, right? They can't say they don't care about those because you've already aligned with the right set of accounts that they do care about. So that eliminates that excuse, and that's typically the biggest excuse. So it starts with aligning around the right strategy, which is why ABM campaigns typically work, or these work better than traditional campaigns.
Great. And on this same topic of enabling the sales teams, Bense, do the sales teams have access to be able to maintain or update this information that the marketing teams are collecting in the database? Is there alignment there?
Well, there's integration with Sales Cloud and Eloqua, as well as the data warehouse. And we do have specific programs around actions on lead disposition, that they would go into a very specific nurture campaign. For example, an unresponsive lead or a closed lead would go into try to reactivate that lead. And there's also ways how sales can recommend or elect a specific contacts to go into different nurture programs and campaigns as well.
Great. And Bense, what % of your data is sourced from internal systems versus external systems, maybe third-party data?
Well, yeah, I was looking at that, and the external data says web activity, which to me is, it's both internal and external. I mean, the internal data, so, if the question is purchase data versus non-purchase data, it's 80% first party, which is we own the data. So it comes from our own systems or what we collect, and maybe 20% would be purchased. your internal data is primarily your contacts, your accounts, what do they buy, how do they interact with Oracle, and then all of the web interactions and web tracking as well. External data, again, we get other market attributes, so we know more about the companies, market behavioral data, and sometimes enrichment, both for accounts as well as contacts. So I hope I answered your question.
Great. And Benze, is there a plan in the future to utilize something like a single key ID across multiple systems for identical records, or how are we tracking, I guess, or collecting the data for contacts, accounts, and products and connecting them?
Yeah, and I was specifically addressing that when I talked about CX Unity, because I was already reading the Q&A. Yes, absolutely. So we do that already with CX Unity as well as with the data warehouse I was covering earlier. So we have single key both for accounts, for people, and for products that go across all of our systems. And part of what the system does is it helps you map, let's say, 10 different sources, or how many different sources you have for an account, define the rules, and then come up with the golden key that now they can use into any other system to trace it back or link interactions together. So that's the key power that enables you to break down the silos and make use of it.
Great. And another question for you. Does BlueKai intent data get pulled into Unity from BlueKai? And can that data be converted to data enrichment?
So I wish that was the case, but it actually works the other way, right? So you can take your first-party data from Unity and you can push it into BlueKai and match it to the anonymous universe there, and then use that for segmentation or outsourcing. Again, you need to be very careful, especially you mentioned Europe. The privacy rules there are very different from in the US. So matching any sort of anonymous data to known data, you need to be very careful how you are managing to those privacy rules. There are ways to do it, but the best way is really to drive them to a landing page and have you collect and confirm and have them opt in and have them allow you to use that information. You can do these things at a domain or account domain or IP address level to a certain extent, and you could map that interest and intent to that domain level. But on an individual level, it only works one way.
Great. And how can one learn to use the CX Unity applications? Is there any resources that we're providing for that?
Yes, it is up on our web, or just reach out to me and I'm happy to provide more information after the webcast.
Great. We have a couple more questions, and we have about 10 more minutes left in the allotted time for the webcast. Do we want Oracle Sales to use Oracle Eloqua Profiler to explore activity on their accounts?
Yes, and we already do. It's rolled out. It's available from Customer Connect. In the Sales Cloud, there's a tab where you can click on, and it launches Profiler. It starts with the specific lead or contact that you're looking at, and then from then on you can browse. It's all that is for our internal use documented, and the training is available.
Great, thank you, Benze. Last question that we have right now, and I'll throw this one at Kelvin since we haven't heard from you in a little bit. How is the B2B buyer behavior changing, and how are we as Oracle equipped to answer these changes, or how have we been working to maybe?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So we actually are seeing a convergence between B2B and B2C. In fact, it's almost the same. And it's largely because of the fact that we have to recognize and have empathy for customers. In order to talk about customer experience, part of customer experience is having empathy and understanding who our customers are and what they want, and actually recognizing that they're humans. And so we're starting to see this convergence, because at the end of the day, you're not selling, well, you're targeting accounts. At the end of the day, it's people, humans in these accounts, companies that are making these decisions. And so you have to speak to them on a human level. So it's almost like it's not even B2B anymore. It's like B2B2C, or another term you're starting to hear is H to H, humans to humans. And so the conversation, the messaging in your communications needs to change. It needs to be a lot more humanistic and more lay speak, and and not corporate speak and marketing jargon-ish. So that's definitely from a communication standpoint what we're seeing. We're also seeing a convergence in the data, and a lot of what we just talked about in terms of how the technology supports that. CX Unity allows you to gather the insights, because you're consolidating all of your data silos. You can see more, get more data and get more insights out of that. And that's kind of a page out of the B2C playbook, if you will, because they're always looking at transactional data, purchase data, and then making recommendations based on that purchase data. So the technologies are now allowing us to support it. If there's one thing that we're also clear on in terms of the future, is that there's going to be a lot more data, not less. And so the ability to harness that data and gather insights, and then to execute your campaigns based on that insight, that's everything you just talked about. So, so yeah, that's kind of the how B2B is changing. We really have companies like Amazon, Disney, Apple to thank for that, right? Because they've raised the bar on customer experience, and now the consumers expect that same type of experience from everyone, regardless if you're B2B or B2C. So that bar has been raised for better or for worse, and it's up to companies to meet that challenge.
Great. Well, I think that was our last question, and we're running out of time. So thank you all for attending. We hope that you learned something today to take back to your own business. You'll be receiving a follow-up email within the next 24 hours that will give you directions on how to access the replay for this webinar. Also, if you have any additional questions, or you would like to schedule a meeting with an Oracle expert, you can reach out to the email that is listed on the screen, oracle.contact_ww@oracle.com, with those requests. Thank you all for joining, and we hope to see you again on a future webcast, virtually, of course. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.